Chapter 16 The Brant Approach. The magma drove upward, melting its way through the fractured rock of the channels under the western side of the island. Now and then it struck a rock with higher water content, and the island shuddered under a new explosion as the steam expanded. Rick felt the bed shake under him and sat upright. A new day had dawned, and there was much to do. He and Scotty had volunteered to help Captain Ricardo Montoya plan the evacuation of the island, and the youthful officer had accepted with pleasure. He had agreed to meet them for breakfast. The scientists had worked late, trying to extrapolate their data into some kind of prediction. Rick and Scotty, tired after an exhausting day, had gone to bed while the lights still burned in Hartson Brant's room. Scotty awoke as Rick's feet hit the floor. "I'm getting used to these little earthquakes," he said. "I don't know if I'll be able to sleep on a steady ground after this." "The ground is going to get unsteadier," Rick reminded, until boom. "I haven't forgotten," Scotty said grimly. "Let's get dressed and eat. I am hungry." "It's ham and eggs for me," Rick told him. "If I had to watch milk slosh around in a cereal bowl, I'd get seasick." The boys dressed rapidly and hurried down to the hotel coffee shop. They were just in time. Ricardo Montoya walked in just as they were seated. The officer joined them. Rick noted that his face was drawn and tired and thought Montoya had probably been up most of the night. "How's the evacuation going?" Rick asked. Montoya shook his head. "Poorly. My uncle's radio broadcasts continued all night and through the morning hours. A few families have come to the harbor, and the stevedores are organizing now to get them aboard ship. A few fishing boats have come, with fishermen's families, but there is no big exodus." "Don't they realize the danger?" Scotty exclaimed. "Perhaps. You must understand my people. They have lived with earthquakes all their lives. Not so often, perhaps, but these are not unusual. What is there to be excited about? Who believes El Viejo will explode? It never has, so it never will." Rick thought it over. "Maybe not enough for hearing the broadcasts." "That is possible. I have put volunteers to work going from house to house, asking people to turn on their radios to hear the governor, and also to explain the urgency. But it will take a long time, even in calor." "If we only had the troops," Rick said thoughtfully. "Trained manpower is what's needed for a job like this." "True. And I think if my uncle could only talk to the troops, they would believe him. But he cannot reach them. Guevara's peons would never let him by." The hotel loudspeaker drowned out his last words as a soft feminine voice paged someone in Spanish. "If only the troops could listen to the radio," Rick commented. "Perhaps they'd believe him and turn on Guevara." "Perhaps. But soldiers cannot afford radios, and they are away from their barracks now. There is no way for my uncle's voice to reach them." There had to be, Rick thought. There had to be some way. The loudspeaker sounded again, paging a Senor Alvarez. Rick sat bolt upright. Why not use a loudspeaker? "Listen," he said excitedly. "If the government radio station has loudspeakers, or can make them, we can put it in my plane. I can fly the governor over the troops, and he can talk to them directly. My plane can go slowly enough and low enough for that." "How about a power supply?" Scotty asked. "There must be an inverter on the island somewhere. We can use automobile batteries, and the inverter will give us 110 AC for a while until the batteries run down. Just 20 minutes of power would be enough, and then we can come back and get new batteries." Scotty chuckled. "The Brant approach," he said. "There always is one. How about it, Captain?" "We will try," Montoya said decisively. "You have not eaten? Then do so, while I make a phone call to the radio station. I have had coffee and rolls, and perhaps there will be time to join you for breakfast while the radio engineers get the equipment together." The boys were just finishing ham and eggs when Montoya returned. There was a broad smile on his tired face. "The engineers say it can be done. They have a portable loudspeaker system, and there is an inverter, as you called it, at the transmitter." "What is an inverter?" "It's like an electric generator," Rick explained. "Battery current turns it, and it produces a 110-volt alternating current, like house current. But inverters aren't very efficient, and they take a lot of battery current. That's why we'll need as many batteries as we can carry." The chief radio engineer said he understood exactly what was needed. "He will gather the materials and meet us at the airport. Now, I think we have time for coffee, and perhaps I can follow your example with ham and eggs. It will take an hour for the equipment to be ready. Also, I called my uncle. He will be waiting for our call." "Did you get any sleep last night?" Scotty asked. Montoya smiled. "Sleep? I have forgotten what it is. But perhaps if this plan of yours works, I will remember. Then I can sleep tonight." A check with the hotel desk told Rick that the scientists had left word they were not to be disturbed until later in the morning, except for an emergency. They had worked a good part of the night, apparently, with no satisfactory results. The boys waited until Ricardo Montoya had finished breakfast, then rode with him to the airport. There was another wait while the radio engineers arrived, bringing the loudspeaker equipment. Rick supervised the placement of the amplifier in the rear seat. The inverter was placed on the floor and wedged into place with scrap lumber. The automobile batteries were put into the luggage compartment behind the rear seat and were also wedged into place. Wires were run from the amplifier through the rear seat windows, which were open just enough to take the thin cables. The leads were then brought out to the plane's wing struts. 2 large loudspeakers were attached to the struts. At first, there was some difficulty in figuring out how to secure them, but the chief engineer, a resourceful type, managed to find a pair of U-bolts somewhere in the hangar. They did the job nicely. The chief engineer connected up, then hung the microphone between the 2 front seats. He threw a switch and the inverter started up with a whine. At the throw of a second switch, the loudspeakers broke into a hum. The engineer tapped on the microphone, and the tap, greatly amplified, reverberated across the airstrip. "It works!" Rick exclaimed, delighted. "Como no?" the engineer said with a smile. He spoke to Montoya in Spanish. The officer translated. "There is one more thing. He has rigged a cable with a switch box so you can operate the controls from the front seat. When the cable is attached, you will be ready. I will go call my uncle." Rick and Scotty watched as the engineer got busy hooking the remote switch cable into the amplifier. "Room for only 2, Rick pointed out. "Want to toss for it?" Scotty shook his head. "It was your idea. I'll stay on the ground, take the governor, and talk those troops into submission." "Maybe," Rick said. "We'll see. I think it depends on whether or not they know the real story. If they have any idea there are diamonds around, they won't be interested in anything else." "Kivara wouldn't dare let them in on it," was Scotty's opinion. "I'll bet they're just following orders with no idea what's behind all this. Most of them probably think there really is a national security conference going on." Rick thought Scotty was probably right. Time would tell. He waited until the engineer signaled that the job was done, then climbed into the pilot seat. He checked the plane over. Plenty of gas. Everything seemed okay. He tried the loudspeaker switches, then spoke into the microphone. He could hear his voice boom out with thunderous amplification and saw Scotty clap his hands to his ears. Finally, he started the engine and let the plane warm, keeping an eye on his gauges. When the manifold temperature got high enough, he cut the switch. He tested the control surfaces, and he was satisfied. Now all he needed was the governor. Governor Montoya arrived within 10 minutes. He inspected the plane and its equipment and nodded his approval. "Very ingenious. Shall we try it?" "Yes, sir." Rick helped the governor in, buckled his safety belt, then ran around and got into the pilot's seat. He started the engine, waved to Scotty and the others, and taxied out to the runway. The tower gave him clearance, and he took off. "We'll make a swing over the area and locate the troops," he explained above the sound of the plane's engine. "Then I'll slow down as much as I can, and you can talk." Rick climbed to 1,000 feet and set a course directly for the Hot Springs Hotel. He asked, "Sir, how many troops are there?" "Our Army numbers 3 companies, of about 250 men each. Then we have a few special units, including the transportation platoons, perhaps 900 in all. We do not need a large army, but we need some kind of force. These are troubled times, and there is always some danger that a revolutionary force might consider us an excellent staging or training base for an invasion of a nearby country. So, we keep prepared." The Sky Wagon was over the hotel within minutes. Rick spotted a large group of soldiers, he estimated about 200, dispersed around the hotel. They probably thought they really were guarding a conference. He banked left and followed the contour of the mountains, and found another group of soldiers camped near the pumice works. That is 2 companies accounted for, more or less, the governor stated. Now, can we find the third? It wasn't difficult. Rick followed the dirt road to San Souci and found the third large group marching in the direction of the mountain, apparently about to join forces with the group at the pumice works. Let's take a look at the diamond pipe, he suggested, and pulled the Skywagon around in a tight circle. He had his bearings, and the third shot station was not difficult to locate. There was considerable activity. Earth-moving machinery had been moved into place and was operating. The yellow ground was completely gone, and the equipment was cutting into the blue kimberlite below. Military trucks were lined up, apparently waiting to be loaded with the blue earth. Where are they taking it? The governor wondered. Rick had talked with Dave Riddle about the process. They need water. The blue earth is run down long wooden tables with cleats on them, like washing out gold. The tables are coated with grease. The diamonds stick in the grease, and the blue earth washes away. They probably set things up at the pumice works if there's water there. Otherwise, it may be the hotel. It has to be the hotel, then, the governor explained. There would not be enough water at the pumice plant. Well, I think we have found all our troops. Those who are not with the 3 companies are below us, digging diamonds. I wonder if they know what they are digging. Rick told the governor what Scotty had said. That is probably right, the governor agreed. Guevara would not dare let too many in on the secret. Well, shall we get to work? Yes, sir, Rick said. He handed the governor the microphone and swung into position for a run over the troops on the road. He throttled down and then gave the plane a few degrees of flaps. He kept an eye on his airspeed indicator. If he got too slow, the plane would stall and he'd be too low to recover. I'll make as tight a circle as I can, he said. Be ready. The troops came into sight. Rick lost altitude and began a slow circle only a few hundred feet above the marching soldiers. He turned on the switches and nodded. The governor began to talk in slow, clear Spanish. Rick understood that he identified himself to the men below, but then he lost the trend of the talk. He concentrated on flying. The loudspeakers were operating perfectly, and he knew the troops could hear. He could see them looking up and pointing, but they kept marching. Apparently, the governor wasn't making much of an impact. The governor paused, and Rick cut the switches. Maybe they don't believe it's you, he suggested. Perhaps not, but my voice is well known. I speak over the radio at least once a week. More likely the whole idea is just too much for them. Who can believe that mountain over there is about to blow up? Let's try the troops at the pumice works. Maybe you can tell them that all who care about their homeland should march at once to Calor. I will try it, the governor agreed. Rick circled low over the pumice works while the loudspeakers blasted at the troops below. They watched the plane. They pointed. Some ran out for a better look. But when the governor pleaded with them to hurry to Calor to help save the people of the island, nothing happened. If El Viejo started smoking, they'd move fast enough, Rick said bitterly. But then it would be too late. They just don't believe there's any danger. And maybe they're not sure it's you. I guess no one has ever given them orders from the air before. They're simple people, the governor agreed. I think most of them have never heard of a volcano. They don't even know what an eruption is. How can they be excited? If I ever succeed in getting good schools here, this may change. But that won't help us now. Rick considered. It would do little good to repeat the announcement to the soldiers at the hotel. He wondered if Guevara and Connell were somewhere below, and with that thought, he turned towards the diamond pipe. Let's see if we can do any good with the truckmen, he suggested. Tell them the trucks are essential to the safety of their families. The governor tried while Rick held the plane in a tight circle over the blue ground. Again, there was interest in the flying loudspeaker plane itself, but the message made no impact. Then Rick noticed tiny spurts of fire from one edge of the diamond field, and cold sweat started on his forehead as he suddenly realized what they were. They're shooting at us, he exclaimed. He gave the plane the gun, opening the throttle all the way, and took evasive action as the distance widened. I saw, the governor said wearily. It was not the troops. It was the peons. Our friend Guevara is down there, I think. But he needs not be afraid of our effect. We have had none. Rick had seldom felt so frustrated. He was tempted to call the San Lucians a stupid bunch of cattle, but he realized the governor had stated the case accurately. They just didn't understand the danger. What would they understand? His lips formed the words, "Diamonds." At least they would understand diamonds. "Sir," he said excitedly, "we can break this up, at least enough so we can start collecting data again. If we tell them the whole story, they'll at least understand that Guevara is after great treasure. They'll flock to the diamond field and disrupt the operation, and we can move back in and get some of the shot stations. The people won't be any worse off than they are now, and it will give us a chance to do something." The governor considered. "Perhaps that is the only solution. It will not get my people to safety, but at least it will give us a chance to find the exact situation. When I talked with your father this morning, he said they needed more data or they could tell nothing about the timing of the eruption. If we get that data, then I will ask the Americans for troops. If we must, we will take the people off by armed force to save their lives in spite of themselves." Rick circled and lost altitude again. He got into position over the marching troops and turned on the switches. He gave the governor the nod. Later, the governor told him what he had said. "Soldiers of San Luis, do you know what you are protecting in this area? It is not because of a great conference. It is because Lieutenant Governor Guevara has found great treasure. He is using you to help him become the wealthiest man in the world. But what will you get out of this? Nothing. He will give you nothing. Go for yourself and see the blue earth. It is found only near mountains like El Viejo. Do you know what it contains? Diamonds, the most valuable gems in the whole world. Will you let Guevara use you to make himself rich while you get nothing? Do not be fools. Help yourselves to this wealth. Look for the crystal pebbles, the ones like cloudy glass among the blue stones. Go. You are soldiers. Take your share." "They're running!" Rick pounded on the control wheel. "Look, they're breaking ranks and they're running!" "Excellent," the governor said calmly. "Now, the other groups. Then in spite of the rifle fire, let us go tell those at the diamond pipe what they are doing. They will not hit us with those rifles." Rick knew that was probably true. A lucky shot might get them, but it took practice to hit a fast-flying plane, even with automatic weapons. "Let's go," he said.